Germany's latest battleship, the Bismarck, and a companion ship were on a mission to intercept and destroy supply convoys heading to the United Kingdom. Destroying these are vital to forcing the British to surrender, which makes these targets the highest of priorities. Unbeknownst to the crew of the Bismarck, this mission would be one of the most intense naval battles in history. The Third Reich unveils its newest battleship, Bismarck. German media proclaimed that the ship weighed 35,000 tons, the legal limit set by the League of Nations after World War I. However, Bismarck was hiding a massive secret from the world. In truth, the ship weighs a shocking 50,000 tons. Bismarck is 823 feet long, sides are armored with 13 inches of steel, and carries 8 15-inch guns, and has a speed of 30.8 knots. Bismarck and Prince Eugen embark on a secret mission codenamed Exercise Rhine. Their mission is to intercept and destroy supply convoys, the lifeline keeping the British in the war. However, they were spotted by a British Spitfire just off the coast of Norway. The British, upon realizing this was a German battleship, sent the HMS Prince of Wales and their flagship, HMS Hood, to intercept the Bismarck and sink the German vessel. In the Denmark Strait, Hood and Prince of Wales approached the German fleet. The four ships were several miles apart from each other, trying to get a gauge of their capabilities. However, the standoff would end abruptly when the Bismarck opened fire upon the Hood. Whenever the Bismarck fired a volley, the entire ship seemed to shift. The guns were so large and their energy so immense that they are capable of shifting the largest vessel that's ever sailed the seven seas in the water. 13 miles away from the Bismarck, the British raced to try and close distance between them and the Germans. Hood had been due for a refit for years now. However, due to the war being declared, there was no time to pull her into port. Because of this, Hood's deck armor is extremely thin and vulnerable to something called plunging fire. Plunging a shell means to fire it at a steep angle, allowing the momentum and angle to create a large parabola in the sky. Doing this helps increase a shell's momentum with gravity and will often pierce right through the lightly armored decks of most ships. In order to mitigate this weakness, the British steamed towards the Germans, hoping to force them to fire level, allowing Hood's thicker side armor to take the hits and spare her greatest weakness from enemy fire. The Germans have the advantage. They have managed to cross the T with the British. This allows them to bring all their guns to target along their broadsides, while the British can only fire their forward-facing guns. It didn't take long for the Germans to draw first blood in the battle. Hood's ammunition depot is obliterated by a German shell. Explosions and fire tear across her deck, cutting down any sailors unlucky enough to be near the impact. Hood is now on fire, and this fire is causing more ammunition to explode, just more slowly. Another shell hits Hood's main tower, just barely missing the command deck in the process. Hood is now 8 miles away from the Germans. Her captain orders a hard right turn in order to bring all his guns to bear against his foes. He figured that Hood was a safe distance from plunging fire, having closed the distance by 5 miles. However, this would prove to be a false assumption. Bismarck fires another salvo. From this salvo, a single 17,000-pound shell plunges into Hood. Right into the center of the ship, the German gunners had managed to angle the shell in a way that pierced Hood's deck. The result? A geyser of flames began to spew out from Hood's deck, tearing the ship in half with a horrifying scene for the sailors on the Prince of Wales. The shell had ignited the powder stored in Hood's primary magazine. This caused all the munitions to burn like they were a Roman candle, causing a geyser of fire I described earlier. The immense force and pressure building up inside her hull causes the Hood to bulge, buckle, and then shear into two halves. Both halves sank beneath the waves. Barely any sailor survived the explosion. Seemingly in defiance, Hood's very front turret fired one final blast as the ship slipped beneath the waves. Only 3 sailors survived the sinking of the Hood. Even the Germans aboard the Bismarck were in shock at what happened. HMS Prince of Wales is now alone against 2 German battleships. She is a new ship with new innovative weaponry. However, due to this, her turrets have become unreliable, and she suffers from mechanical issues this entire mission. When the Germans began bombarding her position, the crew was lucky the damage only caused her guns to jam. Her captain ordered a smoke screen to be popped and for the ship to withdraw. The Germans don't follow, primarily due to the Bismarck sustaining damage from the fight against Hood. The fuel tanks are ruptured and water has been seeping into the hull. Bismarck must return to friendly ports for repairs. The Bismarck leaves Prince Eugen and makes a heading for Nazi-occupied France. The race to catch the Bismarck has begun. Mere hours after Hood sank, the British were sent into high gear. The entire North Atlantic fleet was sent to reinforce Admiral Tovey, who was tracking Bismarck with the help of Prince of Wales and 2 other ships that were shadowing the monster's vessel. Determining that the best way to catch... Yeah? Yeah, okay. Yeah, love you too, Mom. Yeah, I'll tell them. Okay, bye. My mother says you should like and subscribe to the channel. Determining that the best way to catch up with the Bismarck and do some real damage is via an airstrike, Tovey gives the order to launch an attack from the skies. A large flight of Swordfish torpedo bombers launched from the aircraft carrier Victorious. These antiquated bombers look like they came straight out of the First World War. Made of canvas and wire, these old planes were sent up against the latest in battleship technology. The odds were not in their favor. The Swordfish has a top speed of 143 miles per hour, a range of 1,030 miles, and a light armament of 2 machine guns and 1 torpedo. It has a length of 35 feet, a wingspan of 45 feet, and a height of 12 feet. It's powered by one Bristol Pegasus 3M.3 air-cooled radial engine, capable of generating 690 horsepower. Due to its dual-wing design and its frame being made of metal and fabric, the Swordfish proved to be one of the most maneuverable attack aircraft during the war. It was also capable of taking off from short runways, making them perfect for use in the Royal Navy. The bombers break into 3 attack groups. They dive towards the ocean surface, spread out, and approach the Bismarck slowly. In response, the Germans did everything they could to take these planes down. The gun sights of the Bismarck were designed for more modern aircraft, meaning that the Swordfish are so low and so slow that the Bismarck can't line up a clean shot. One tactic the Germans used was to fire their primary shells into the sea ahead of the enemy aircraft, hoping that the columns of water shot into the air could force one to crash. The Swordfish launched their torpedoes. The Bismarck turned sharply to avoid each successive wave of attacks. However, this tactic would not work forever, as eventually a torpedo would strike the midship of the Bismarck. The strike caused minimal damage, however the resulting jolt to the ship shut off its main turbines. The Germans were stuck while they rushed to get their engines restarted. The Swordfish, having spent their ammo, retreat to the clouds to escape the Bismarck. Now, Bismarck needs to escape. In order to evade the British ships shadowing them, the Bismarck did something clever. Knowing that the shadowing ships needed to travel in a zigzag-like pattern to avoid detection, Bismarck would wait until the British were the furthest way away, before turning around and crossing over its own wake. This forces the British to lose radar contact, and the Bismarck has escaped. Desperate to relocate the Bismarck, Admiral Tovey approved the use of Catalina Flying Boats, or PBYs, to help aid in the search effort. These planes were lend-leased to Britain by the United States to help support the war effort. With a longer range than most British aircraft, the PBYs scanned the ocean from above, eventually spotting the Bismarck and informing the British, Bismarck has been found. 8 hours after finding Bismarck, a new wave of Swordfish approaches and begins an attack run. Diving through the clouds, the pilots begin to attack. Due to the frames of the Swordfish aircraft, many of the Germans' bullets simply fly right through the frame, doing minimal damage. One pilot, Moffat, was on his approach to attack, but he stopped when his observer told him not to launch yet. Moffat's observer was hanging out the side of the airplane, watching the waves below. The reason for this odd behavior was tactical. If the torpedo hits the water when a wave is going up, it could veer off the target and not do anything meaningful. The torpedo needed to be launched during the trough of a wave, where the water was at its lowest and calmest state. This would ensure the torpedo stayed on target. Bismarck continued to turn. However, a hard turn to port would prove to be a mistake. This turn put Moffat's torpedo right into Bismarck's stern. The damage was massive, and as a result, the rudders are permanently jammed 12 degrees to port. The Bismarck was stuck in a permanent turn and could not break free. The Bismarck is crippled. Its admiral sent a message to German command. Ship unmaneuverable. We will fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. British ships closed into Bismarck's position, and what began to unfold could only be considered as hell to everyone involved. Surrounding Bismarck, Tovey hopes to divide Bismarck's fire and then turn all his ships broadside, unleashing a hail of shells that could rip the Bismarck apart. The Bismarck and the British take a while to get zeroed in. Every missed salvo means a ship is that much closer to landing a hit, and at 9:02 a.m., the British hit the Bismarck. Shell after shell slams into the Bismarck, destroying the air ducts, ammo racks, turrets, AA guns, communications tower, and any other systems necessary for the Bismarck to float, and fire its weapons. Finally, at 9:31 a.m., the Bismarck fired one final salvo. No longer able to fight back, the massive ship was simply target practice for the British Royal Navy. The British fired over 2,500 shells, 400 of which hit their mark and crippled the ship. In the end, the Germans opted to scuttle the Bismarck. However, 3 torpedoes hit the ship before they could. The mighty Bismarck began to sink beneath the waves, never to harass the sea again. Only 115 sailors survive of the German ship, out of the full crew of 2,092 sailors. The mightiest battleship to ever sail the seas was in the end taken out by obsolete airplanes, proving once and for all that air power was the future of sea domination.